All right, everyone. This is part 3. We're going to keep on going. I think we might be able to get this in 4 parts, so let's keep going. What a way to start part 3 with Death Leprosy. I said on the first part that Bolt Thrower was very important for me to get into death metal, but Death was the band that really got me into death metal, and specifically early Death. I talked about this earlier. Late 80s death metal is my favorite. Um, Death would kind of. I know people really like the sound of Perseverance and Individual Thought Patterns, which I mean I've listened to a bunch, but I don't like it as much as the early stuff. I like Symbolic, not as a death metal album though. I think Symbolic is just a good melodic metal album that has really good songs that happens to have screaming vocals. But this is death metal, Leprosy. And Leprosy kind of laid the path of this is how you start and do death metal. I think I'm quoting Thralls of Metal there. Shout out to Necrotic Nick there. Um, anyway, Leprosy, Born Dead, Left to Die. These are just excellently made death metal albums. What makes this one a little different is that Rick Ross, who later goes on to Massacre for a bit, well, the whole backstory of Massacre, Death, Mantis, like the whole thing is like a revolving door of a bunch of these metal dudes from Florida. But what I was going to say is that this seems like more of a collaborative effort as a band rather than just Chuck Schuldiner just writing the whole thing. I mean, yeah, Chuck's writing most of these songs and lyrics, but it seems a little bit more collaborative. You can see some of the influence that Rick Ross had a lot more on this than, say, the next album, Spiritual Healing, which had a different guitar player. Yeah, Death Leprosy, one of the best metal, not just death metal, but just best metal albums too. Plus, come on, making a pink album cover look badass. That's got to get some points there. Credit to Ed Repka on that one. All right, here's another. We got indie pop. Ravenna Woods. This is actually a local band that I went to go see live. Kind of like an indie rock type of thing. Really made a good show. I don't really have any standout tracks here, but I picked up this album. I wanted to shout them out. Ravenna Woods, drums by none other than Mr. Matt Badger. If you're from the Pacific Northwest, they might be playing near you. So go ahead and check them out. Ravenna Woods, indie rock, kind of a lot of. I wouldn't say it's acoustic, but it's definitely. When I went to go see them live, it definitely gave me like alternative indie rock vibes. Speaking of Ed Repka, though, the other Pink album, Megadeth, Peace Sells, but Who's Buying? As you can see, big Megadeth fan. But Peace Sells is really a special album for a lot of reasons. I know people. I was a big Rust in Peace guy, and I'll probably talk about Rust in Peace if I ever do a CD collection update. But Peace Sells is a very special album. I think that just the fact that they made this album with in what state they were in at the time is so interesting. The first 4 songs on this album are just all 10 out of 10s with Wake Up Dead and Conjuring, Peace Sells, Devil's Island. Those are all just those exemplify what Dave Mustaine was going for with Megadeth. And yeah, you could say that like Last Rites Love to Death says enough on the first album, but I would say that this is where the ideas really came through. I'm a fan of So Far, So Good, So What and Rust in Peace, but I think there's something really special here. Maybe Chris Poland and Gar Samuelson being there added that extra layer of musicianship that really makes Peace Sells a special thrash metal album. So, again, really popular one, but let's go into something newer. Skeletal Remains. I think this is called the Entombment of Chaos. I always felt like that sounded like a mashup of like every death metal album ever, but which this kind of is in a way. So this came out in 2019, I believe. Really just like Morbid Angel and death and old Florida death metal worship on this one. I know Skeletal Remains, their earlier stuff kind of sounds more like Pestilence, like death thrash. But then their last two albums, they went way more into like the '90s death metal stuff. I mean, again, I gotta say Morbid Angel. We'll talk about Morbid Angel in a bit, but um, this really was one of my favorites of the year. I Same thing with the traditional heavy metal, like the new wave of traditional heavy metal. A lot of the new wave death metal bands are kind of harkening back to a golden age. I don't really have a problem with that because that's the stuff I actually want to listen to, and there's plenty of bands doing all sorts of experimental stuff. But most of the time, if I'm going to go see a band, I'm going to want to hear something like this. So, Skeletal Remains, Entombment of Chaos. Really excited about where they go next. I would say Dissect to See is the standout track by far here. If you got to listen to one ear, Dissect to See. It's a killer track. Really good production, too. All right, let's go into a different direction here. Perturbator. I Am the Night. This is dark synth. Really interesting. I was getting into synthwave for a long time ago, but then I kind of really only kept listening to Perturbator. I saw him live, I think in 2018 in San Francisco. It was a very good show. I hear he plays with a drummer now, which is really cool. His newer stuff seems to be way more kind of goth industrial, whereas this was still when he was going full retro synth mode. But I just think that this is kind of his best album in a way. Some people like Dangerous Days, which is the one after this, better, or the one after that, which was Neo. No, it was the Uncanny Valley. Neo Tokyo was on that album. But this wasn't as intense. You see, Perturbator went way too like intense, and then it kind of peaked with that EP, the New Model EP, which was just like insane bass blasting in your ears the whole time. Which, I mean, is a good time. But this has a lot of subdued moments. I liked I Am the Night. It's got a way more chill. There is no better album to drive around at night in the city than this one, I would say. Just total Blade Runner vibes on this one. And I get that it's not sustainable, and Perturbator had to go on with his artistic vision with the band. Lustful Sacraments that came out last year was definitely a way different departure than this, but this one's really cool. I didn't hate Lustful Sacraments, but I think that album is kind of what I like from Perturbator the best. Here it comes. Electric Wizard, Dope Throne. Bunch of people like to kind of make fun of Electric Wizard for one reason or another. I just really, really think that they accomplished something special with this one. And the one before, they just with that fuzz guitar sound. And I mean, I think I first heard about this album from a comedy bit from Brian Fossum talking about Satan taking a bong rip in the woods. I just had to listen to it, and like once I heard Funeralopolis, I was like, oh yeah, this is real grimy stoner doom metal, and it's kind of a one track thing. They don't really go in a lot of places. There's some freak out like psychedelic parts on this, but it's mostly slow doom metal, stoner doom, lots of fuzz, lots of people. I think what people mostly talk trash about this album is all the effects that they put on the voice, but I think it adds to it personally. This is a really cool album. I wasn't really aware of it when it came out because it was the early 2000s, but now if I'm going to listen to a stoner doom album, this is one of my favorites. I don't have Satan Worshipping Doom by Bong Ripper, but that's another one that I would put in a similar lane. Testament, the only Testament album that I have on vinyl, although I should have more. The Legacy, this is the first album. Just really killer thrash metal. We're talking about a band that had been playing the local scene for a while in the Bay Area, and then they came in 1987 ready to go with a ripper. I think they had to do some lineup changes first. They had to find Alex Skolnick, who was like 16 when he joined the band, and Chuck Billy joined kind of late after Steve Souza, Zetro went kind of starting in this band, and then went to Exodus when they were taking off, and then Testament had to find a new singer, which I think was a really good call. I'm not dissing Steve Souza, but I like Chuck Billy a lot more than Steve Souza's style. And I think that he really carries Testament through their career, which is hard to say because they are just all excellent musicians in Testament. Eric Peterson, Alex Skolnick, great guitar duo. Alex Skolnick being one of the most versatile guitar players in the game. Rhythm Section does a solid job on this one. This album definitely has the 80s production with just everything blown to hell in the reverb department, but really excellent thrash metal, Bay Area thrash. I would put this with like Bonded by Blood and Violence, Eternal Nightmare as far as like classic Bay Area thrash. Maybe Forbidden Evil too. All right, that's going to be the end of this part. We'll see if we can get this in 4. So we'll see you in the next one.